Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a pretty profound philosophical framework today to uncover the true, spiritual nature of human connection. We're going to explore what it really means to love, not just as some fleeting emotion, but as a foundational principle of our very existence. To do this, we're pulling our core insights directly from Chapter 1 of Ryuho Okawa's foundational text, The Origin of Love. We'll be examining how love transitions from an abstract and honestly often misunderstood idea into a crystal-clear pathway for actionable spiritual growth.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the meaning of love, the origin of love, what hinders love, overcoming good and evil, and finally, the true starting point.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the meaning of love, uniting the self and others.
So the author doesn't just define love as a fleeting emotion or some basic biological drive. It's framed as a really profound spiritual recognition, literally the unity of self and others. The idea here is that we are originally separated from one God. So that deep desire you feel to connect with other people, it's actually a soul-deep yearning to return to that original unified state. Basically, loving others is essentially loving yourself, and ultimately, loving the divine. It's this incredible force that calls out and naturally elevates both the giver and the receiver.
Now, you might be wondering, where does this powerful, unifying force actually come from? Like, why do we inherently love in the first place? And what's the ultimate source of this energy that survives generation after generation? That brings us to Section 2, the origin of love and the power of eternal life.
The text explains that the true origin of love is actually found in eternal life itself. It posits that our souls are eternal, they don't just wear out or deplete over time, and the reason our spiritual energy never runs dry is because it's constantly being supplied by God's boundless energy. This continuous, nurturing power that sustains our eternal life, that is the very origin of love. It's an infinite resource, and it's meant to be shared, not hoarded.
But hang on, this raises a pretty glaring contradiction, right? If love and eternal life are our natural, intended states, and we've got this endless supply of energy, what exactly is getting in the way? Why is there so much division, conflict, and human suffering in the world?
Let's explore that in Section 3, What Hinders Love and the Trap of Egoism. The text lays out a really dramatic contrast here. If you buy into the belief of a one-time life, thinking your existence is limited to just a few decades before turning to dust, the author argues that naturally fuels egoism. You kind of start panicking, thinking only about me, which builds a massive wall between you and everyone else. On the flip side, recognizing our eternal life dissolves that panic completely. Understanding our infinite nature frees us from those selfish desires and lets us focus on unity, elevating each other through genuine love.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Overcoming Good and Evil, Breaking Down the Walls.
So how exactly do we tear down these walls we've built around ourselves? Well, the author argues that acquiring divine truth acts as a real unifying force. When you truly grasp the spiritual reality of how interconnected we all are, it just shatters those walls of misunderstanding. And even more provocatively, the text suggests this knowledge elevates us way beyond the simplistic, worldly dualities of good and evil. Instead of judging people from a place of ego, truth lets us see our shared origins, breaking down all those barriers of separation.
Okay, so having removed these psychological and spiritual barriers and moving past egoism and separation, we finally hit our highest ascent. And we have to ask, what does love actually look like in its purest, most evolved form?
That brings us to our final section, the true starting point and the radiance of the soul. According to the text, love isn't just a single note, it's an entire symphony. To achieve true harmony, the human soul has to constantly learn and reflect the diverse attributes of God. Check out these specific characteristics: love, wisdom, courage, light, intellect, justice, and mercy. A truly evolved soul doesn't just zero in on one of these, it actively seeks to balance all of them. To really bring this home, the text uses this beautiful visual metaphor of a cut diamond. Think about it. A rough diamond doesn't really shine, does it? It needs to be carefully cut. And just like a diamond needs all of its facets perfectly aligned to catch the light and shine brilliantly, our souls have to balance those divine attributes we just looked at. By developing our wisdom, courage, and mercy all together, our soul achieves this incredible harmonious balance, allowing it to radiate true, multifaceted beauty. And you know, when that diamond is fully polished, love gets distilled down to this single, profound truth from the text.
The origin of love is a pure heart of selfless service without expecting anything in return. It completely strips away any sense of arrogance or that transactional, hey, I did this for you, so you owe me mentality. True love is simply the pure, uncompensated desire to give, to serve, and to elevate another human being. As we wrap up today's explainer, we've journeyed all the way from the book's underlying definition of unity to its ultimate expression of selfless service. I want to leave you with a provocative thought from the text to carry with you. If egoism is just a trap, a side effect of thinking our time is limited, how will you apply this new perspective today? How are you going to break down the walls of separation and take just one step toward polishing the diamond of your own soul through an act of selfless love?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a seriously profound and deeply philosophical text. We are unpacking a book called The Origin of Love by Ryuho Okawa. Our goal here is to neutrally map out the really fascinating spiritual architecture presented in this work, paying special attention to the core lectures from Chapter 2. We're going to look at how the author constructs this whole framework around human connection, our existence, and the ultimate purpose of the soul. But before we get too deep into the philosophical weeds, let's just stop and ask a really fundamental question the text poses. Why do we instinctively love? I mean, really think about it. From the second we're born, why do we feel this undeniable, deep-seated urge to connect with people and care for them? The author suggests that this isn't just some learned behavior. Instead, it's something we accept a priori. Basically, it's this deeply ingrained prior knowledge that loving and being loved is just the absolute right way to exist. And that brings us to our source material for today. This is the Japanese cover of The Origin of Love, or Ai no Genten. Throughout this explainer, we'll be objectively breaking down the concepts presented in the book's second chapter, which was originally a foundational lecture series. We're going to see exactly how the text defines love, why human beings experience conflict, and ultimately what all of this means for our own personal growth. Okay, let's jump right in. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the definition of love. Second, the mirror of others. Third, the ultimate life energy. Fourth, overcoming good and evil. And finally, the radiance of the soul. Section 1. The definition of love. When we casually throw around the word love in everyday conversation, we're usually talking about romance or family affection, right? But according to this author, love operates on a massive cosmic level. It's actually defined as a profound inherited memory. The text posits that human beings originally split from a single divine source, something often referred to as a mother entity. So as we go about our lives as all these diverse individuals, love is actually the surfacing of a nostalgic longing to return to that original oneness. When you feel that intense magnetic pull toward another person, the text argues it's literally your soul remembering its ancient connection to the single source we all used to share. Moving right along to Section 2, the mirror of others. So if the ultimate goal here is our own individual soul's growth, why do we even have to deal with other people? The author answers this using a pretty brilliant analogy: Robinson Crusoe. Imagine you're stranded totally alone on a deserted island. You might figure out how to survive, sure, but how would you ever know if you were actually improving as a person? In total isolation, it's virtually impossible to evaluate yourself. There's no one around to hold you accountable. The text points out that we absolutely need the words, the gazes, and the attitudes of others to confirm our own growth. It's the friction, the challenges, and the love from other people that provide the exact resistance our souls need to evolve. The big takeaway here is that others act as a mirror for us. According to the text, love is essentially to love, nurture, and forgive others, because we can only evaluate and improve ourselves through their existence. And honestly, this is where the philosophy gets pretty challenging. The text argues that this applies even when other people hurt you. Because everyone shares that exact same original root we talked about, the conflicts we go through are actually vital tools for polishing our souls. Acknowledging someone else's existence, even when they cause us frustration or pain, is in itself an act of love, and a totally necessary step for our upward progression. Section 3. The ultimate life energy. Up until now, we've been talking about love in terms of human relationships, but the text makes this fascinating pivot into the physical world. The author asks us to look at the grain, the meat, and the vegetables we eat every single day. Have you ever wondered why tomatoes and apples are so delicious, or why fish tastes so good to us? The author argues that this isn't just some random biological coincidence. Instead, these foods are delicious by design. The life energy we receive daily from plants and animals is framed as a literal manifestation of the energy of love that actively wishes to serve others. They are sacrificing their physical forms to give us the energy we need to live. And the author sums up this physical manifestation with a pretty thought-provoking question. This power that nurtures eternal life, isn't this the power of God's love? The text suggests that the simple fact that our life force is continuously replenished by the natural world day in and day out is basically undeniable proof of a universal divine love that is actively sustaining us. Section 4. Overcoming Good and Evil. Now, you might be wondering, if the universe is just overflowing with all this life-sustaining love, why is there so much terrible conflict in the world? Well, the text identifies some very specific hindrances to love. Primarily, it argues that humans suffer from this illusion that life is finite, that our physical existence is all there is. When we believe our time and resources are strictly limited, it breeds massive selfishness. According to the author, what really hinders love are negative emotions, like complaints and anger that deny eternal life. Instead of wanting to elevate other people, this finite mindset causes us to try and control others or drag them down just to secure our own position. This leads to what the text calls the illusion of dualism. The author brings a pretty bold perspective to the classic struggle between good and evil, or heaven and hell. In this philosophy, the conflict between good and evil isn't necessarily about ultimate cosmic absolutes. Instead, it arises purely from humanity's profound lack of mutual understanding. When people fail to see the shared divine root in each other, they build these artificial walls, labeling themselves as good and whoever's on the other side as evil. So how do we fix this? The text proposes learning what it calls divine truth, or Shinri. Divine truth is presented as a shared, fundamental understanding of our spiritual origins. By learning this truth and making the effort to deeply understand each other's hearts, humans can finally break down those walls separating the self from others. So overcoming the conflict of good versus evil isn't about one side finally defeating the other, it's about transcending the division altogether through mutual understanding. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5. Radiance of the soul. So, what is the ultimate end state we are all striving for here? The author uses a really powerful visual metaphor, the soul as a diamond. Now think about a diamond. It doesn't sparkle brilliantly if it's just a rough, jagged stone out of the earth. If it's cracked or unevenly cut, it's going to cast dark shadows. For a diamond to truly radiate light, it has to be meticulously polished with symmetrical, perfectly balanced facets. The text argues that our souls require this exact same kind of balanced polishing. And the text actually outlines what these facets are. They are the diverse attributes of God. To create a beautifully radiant soul, you can't just obsess over one single thing. You have to take in love, wisdom, courage, light, reason, justice, and compassion. The key here is that you must integrate all of these qualities into yourself evenly and in a well-balanced manner. Think about it. If you only have courage but zero compassion, your diamond is jagged. If you have love but absolutely no reason, your light casts a shadow. Taking these various qualities of God into oneself in a perfectly balanced way is precisely what allows the soul to shine. It all culminates in this absolutely beautiful summary statement from the text. The beautiful radiance of the soul is indeed the origin of love. Ultimately, this entire journey, from nostalgically longing to reunite with the source, to enduring the everyday friction of human relationships, to overcoming our selfish anger and dualisms, it's all designed to perfectly cut the diamond of our soul, allowing it to shine its absolute brightest. We've covered a ton of deep spiritual ground today, translating some pretty dense philosophical concepts into a structured framework. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something highly practical to apply to your own life. Looking at those attributes we just talked about, love, wisdom, courage, reason, justice, compassion, ask yourself, which facet of your diamond are you polishing today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're literally popping the hood on the mechanics of prayer, but we're actually looking at it through this really fascinating psychological and energy-based lens. So we're stepping back from those traditional, purely religious views to examine the unseen forces behind, well, why people pray, how it supposedly works, and what it actually does to our internal state. We're grounding today's analysis in the book The Origin of Love, specifically focusing on its framework for understanding universal energy. The author, Ryuho Okawa, presents this highly detailed philosophy of mind and spirit. And in Chapter 3, which is what we'll be dissecting today, he lays out a remarkably structured approach to the unseen forces around us. Impartially speaking, it's just a profound look into the inner workings of faith and human intention. So, right off the bat, the text approaches prayer completely outside of traditional wish-granting frameworks. It redefines it as the act of becoming humble before God and Buddha, and actively connecting to universal energy. It's less about asking for, say, a promotion or a new car, and much more about an introspective practice of self-purification. You're basically aligning yourself with a broader, altruistic rhythm. Okay, let's dive into this structured journey. We're going to cover the true meaning of prayer, why it's not a transaction, connecting with higher spirits, love filling the universe, 2 methods of prayer, and finally, radiating light to the world. Section 1. The true meaning of prayer. Our very first step here is to establish what prayer actually means within this specific philosophy. Honestly, we kind of have to strip away our preconceived notions to understand the text's baseline. Chapter 3 focuses entirely on the individual's internal posture before stepping into the spiritual realm. The essence of prayer is deeply, deeply rooted in how you prepare your own mind. It's about rectifying your posture both literally and spiritually before you even utter a single word. The text outlines that before connecting with anything greater, you must first empty yourself. The author states that if you come to prayer with a heart full of daily anxieties, greed, or just negative thoughts, you essentially block the connection right there. You have to actively remove those worldly vibrations to truly face the divine. It's an act of profound self-reflection, quieting the mind, examining the impurities and cloudiness of your own heart, and facing them head-on without making any excuses. Section 2. Not a transaction. Now, this requires a massive shift in how we usually view divine favors. The text explicitly states that faith is not a cosmic vending machine or some sort of give-and-take contract. That transactional view that assumes, hey, I do this, so the universe owes me that. But this text requires a complete paradigm shift away from that, toward absolute humility. You approach with reflection and, crucially, you surrender the outcome. You are not striking a business deal with the divine. To really illustrate this, the author uses a brilliant corporate metaphor. He explains that it's a lot like a subordinate submitting a project proposal to a supervisor. You can make the request, absolutely, but the ultimate right to approve, reject, or modify that request rests entirely with the higher authority. You have to respect the hierarchy. The decision on whether a prayer is answered or how it's answered is completely up to the judgment of the divine. Section 3. Higher spirits and universal energy. So, who or what is actually receiving these non-transactional prayers? According to the text, connecting with higher spirits, and the source mentions figures like Jesus Christ and others residing in the heavenly realms, requires strict prerequisites. You can't just dial them up on a whim. You have to ensure your frequency matches theirs to close that spiritual distance. And that means purifying your heart, removing extreme attachments or desperation, aligning your thoughts with divine will, and, importantly, maintaining patience over time. And this brilliantly illustrates the spiritual ecosystem described in the book. While you might not get a direct verbal answer or, a booming voice from the clouds, higher spirits naturally catch and respond to thoughts that resonate with divine love. The text explains that these spirits have an inherent nature where they simply cannot ignore a genuine, selfless plea. If your prayer aligns with the greater good, they are instinctively drawn to assist you. Section 4. Love filling the universe. Let's zoom out to a macroscopic view for a second. We're shifting from the personal to the cosmic. Leaning into a really relatable energy metaphor, the text suggests that our daily lives just drain us. The stress, the work, the anxieties, they totally deplete our internal reserves. Because of this, we function a lot like a battery, making it absolutely necessary to tap into the infinite, invisible grid of the universe to recharge. Prayer in this context is literally the act of plugging yourself into that cosmic wall socket. Rather than being this vast, cold, empty space, this philosophy insists the universe is actually overflowing with supportive energy just waiting to be accessed. As this quote highlights, the universe is filled with the energy of love, success, and prosperity. It's an incredibly optimistic viewpoint, right? The energy is already there, abundantly flowing. Humans just need to know how to properly attune their receivers to harness it. Section 5. 2 methods of prayer. So, having established the theoretical framework, how do we practically apply this? The author notes there are generally two types of prayers: prayers for achieving specific desires and prayers for recharging energy. And he explicitly defines the second type, the prayer for recharging energy, as the primary and safest practice. It shifts the whole goal from asking for specific worldly favors to simply refilling your spiritual battery with the universe's infinite power, which the author states carries much, much less spiritual risk. Translating this philosophy into action, the text provides these four clear, practical steps to safely and effectively perform a recharging prayer. First, you quiet the mind. Second, you ask the divine to grant you infinite energy and wisdom. Third, you detach from any specific outcome or timeline. And fourth, and this is absolutely crucial, you take that newly acquired energy, step out into society, and contribute. Section 6. Radiating light to the world. Which brings us to the ultimate purpose of this entire practice. We don't recharge just to feel good. There is a functional end goal here. The text emphasizes that true success isn't about hoarding this recharged energy. It's not meant for satisfying your personal ego or selfish desires. Instead, you're meant to act as a conduit. You draw in the universal energy of love so that you can radiate that light back out into the world, actively contributing to the well-being and prosperity of others. It's this beautiful cycle of receiving and giving. This poignant reminder from the text summarizes the core paradigm shift we've explored today. We are surrounded by an ecosystem of immense altruistic power. We aren't just isolated entities fighting against a harsh world. If we approach it with humility, a clear mind, and a genuine desire to help others, we literally have access to an infinite supply of supportive energy. So as you reflect on this explainer's journey from internal humility all the way out to universal energy, ask yourself this final question. If you could tap into that infinite grid right now, how would you use that energy to contribute to the world today? Thanks for exploring this fascinating topic with me, and keep seeking out the structural truths hidden in our universe.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so thrilled you're joining me for this explainer today. We are going to dive into some truly profound philosophical lessons that are literally hiding right in plain sight. We're going to explore nature's cycles and how simply observing the shifting seasons can actually unlock a much deeper understanding of our own personal development, our struggles, and our ultimate potential. We're drawing from a fascinating text that asks a really fundamental question. What does it mean to truly shine? What is the actual brilliance of life? Get ready, because we are going to look at the world around us in a completely new way.
Okay, before we get too deep, I want you to really think about this for a second. Why did nature actually create the cycle of the 4 seasons? I mean, why isn't it just summer all year round, or a permanent mild spring? We totally take the cycle of winter, spring, summer, and fall as a given, just a background reality of living on Earth. But the source material we're exploring today suggests that this isn't just a weather pattern, it's a profound, deliberate teaching mechanism. The seasons are a mirror, reflecting the fundamental laws of life itself.
So here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to look at nature's ultimate prosperity, the vigorous life force, navigating life's cycles, crafting a beautiful life, and finally, what the brilliance of life truly means. All right, let's dive right in.
Section 1. Nature's ultimate prosperity, focusing on the peak of summer.
Now, the text we're analyzing today doesn't just treat summer as, a hot time of year. It actually breaks it down into 3 really distinct, profound concepts: prosperity, preparation, and impact. Let's start with prosperity. Think about walking outside in the middle of August. The sun is practically blinding. The shadows are deep. The leaves are this incredibly intense green. It's literally the undeniable, visible peak of biological success and expansion. The whole season is just vibrating with life.
And to really capture this, the author gives us this brilliant everyday metaphor. They talk about, quote, the power of weeds, extending their stems and leaves one after another with such vigor. We usually think of weeds as a massive nuisance, right? But honestly, they are masterclasses in persistence. Think about a dandelion. You can chop its head off with a lawnmower, but it's got this taproot that goes 10 inches deep into the earth, just relentlessly storing energy so it can push right back up. That raw, unstoppable drive, that is the absolute essence of nature's prosperity. It's maximum vitality hiding right there in our backyards.
But here's the critical philosophical shift we need to make. That massive summer explosion, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. We have to contrast that explosive, highly visible prosperity of summer with the quiet, unseen, internal preparation of winter. Think about it. During the freezing months, a tree might look completely dead on the outside. But beneath the frozen ground, those roots are working overtime, storing nutrients, preparing. You absolutely cannot have the massive external growth of summer without that silent, harsh internal preparation of winter. They are fundamentally linked.
Moving on to Section 2, the vigorous life force and what's called the accumulation effect.
So how exactly does that quiet winter prep turn into unstoppable summer energy? Well, the source material introduces a fascinating concept to explain this, the accumulation effect. Basically, this is the process where internal preparation and stored energy gradually build up until they hit a very specific threshold, triggering explosive outward growth. It's the idea that absolutely nothing is wasted. Every single drop of water absorbed in the spring, every tiny bit of energy conserved in the winter, it all stacks up. It accumulates.
And this growth happens in 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is the internal accumulation. That's the unseen winter and spring work. Step 2 is crossing the threshold. That's the critical tipping point, where the capacity to store energy simply maxes out, and the only way to go is outward. And then step 3 is the explosive blooming of summer. The big takeaway here, sudden success or sudden brilliance is almost never an accident. It's really just a sudden visibility of a very long, invisible process of accumulation.
But, accumulation isn't the only driver. The text points out a second source of this life force, environmental dynamics. Just think about the summer environment for a second. It is incredibly dynamic and honestly, sometimes really harsh. You've got baking sun, heavy rains, strong winds. The author points out that this environmental friction actually forces life to push back. Like a tree grows stronger roots precisely because the wind is threatening to blow it over. The challenges of the environment don't hinder the life force. They are the exact things that demand the life force to exert its full strength and bloom completely.
Which brings us to Section 3, navigating life cycles and preparing for the fall. Because as we all know, summer doesn't last forever.
And this brings us to one of the most thought-provoking concepts in the whole text. It says, quote, prosperity contains within itself the next sprout, a sign of decline. Think about a piece of perfect fruit. The exact second it reaches absolute perfect ripeness is also the very moment right before it starts to spoil. The brightest flame is burning its fuel the absolute fastest. So the author is essentially warning us that when we are at the absolute peak of our own personal or professional summers, we need to be acutely aware that the very seeds of our next downturn are already present.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that while nature operates on a strict, predictable 365-day loop, human life totally doesn't. The author points out that our cycles vary wildly. Some of us operate on quick 3-year cycles of rapid reinvention. Others are on these massive 10, 20, or even 50-year life arcs. We aren't all experiencing our summers and winters at the exact same time. Our development is this unique, personalized spiral, which means we have to be incredibly self-aware to recognize which season our own soul is currently in.
This leads perfectly into Section 4, crafting a beautiful life and leaving a wake.
Knowing that these cycles of harsh weather and explosive growth are completely unavoidable, how do we actually use them to shape who we are? Well, the text uses this great metaphor of a diamond. A diamond sitting deep in the earth is just a rough, dull rock. Its true, dazzling brilliance only emerges because of how it gets cut. The author applies this directly to us, to the human soul. Our souls require intentional cutting and shaping through life's trials, that environmental friction we talked about, to truly shine. Facing our difficult winters and navigating our intense summers with grace is exactly what cuts the facets of our character, allowing us to radiate true beauty.
To explain this journey even further, the author offers this gorgeous metaphor of a ship's wake. Imagine a ship out on the ocean. Sometimes the wind is perfectly at your back and you sail completely straight. But other times, storms force you to move diagonally or maybe even push you backwards. But no matter the direction, if you look behind the ship, it always leaves a wake in the water. The text argues that even if life blows you completely off course, the trajectory of your actions and how you handle that storm can still leave a perfectly harmonious and beautiful wake. The real beauty is in the resilience of the journey, not just arriving at the destination.
And finally, Section 5, the brilliance of life and spreading the light.
This is the culmination of everything we've been talking about. A huge hurdle to achieving this brilliance is the trap of daily mannerisms, or basically monotonous routines. It is so easy to just go through the motions day in and day out, totally stuck in a rut. But the text practically begs us to escape this trap. When our season to shine finally arrives, when it's our August, we cannot afford to just be ordinary. We have a real responsibility to break out of our routine and actively choose to emit a strong, vibrant light.
We have to fully embody the prosperity that we spent all our internal winters preparing for.
The author absolutely does not mince words here. They state bluntly, a life without brilliance is barren. Wow, it's a really striking statement, isn't it? It means that to go through an entire lifetime without ever allowing your soul to truly sparkle, without ever stepping into your season of maximum impact, is just a tragic waste of potential. We simply cannot neglect the effort it takes to make our souls shine, no matter what kind of harsh circumstances we might be facing.
So the crucial point is this: the ultimate ideal of life, according to the source, isn't just about achieving some quiet internal brilliance or personal success. True brilliance is inherently outward-facing. Think about it. The summer sun doesn't shine for itself, right? It shines to nourish the plants growing beneath it. In the exact same way, the sparkle of your life is meant to be shared. It's about connecting with others and bringing beauty, harmony, and light to the people around you. Spreading that sparkle to the people in our lives, that is the absolute peak of human prosperity.
Which leaves us with this final, really vital question to reflect on. You are constantly moving through your own unique cycles of accumulation and growth. The storms are going to come, and the winters will force you to prepare. But when your personal summer inevitably arrives, when it is finally your time to step into the light, how will your soul shine? What kind of wake will you leave behind? And who are you going to share your brilliance with? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep reflecting, keep growing, and I'll see you next time.
Welcome to This Explainer. You know that feeling when the weight of your entire future is just kind of crushing you before you've even poured your morning coffee? Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a framework designed to fix exactly that. We're exploring Chapter 5 of Ryuho Okawa's book, The Origin of Love, and unpacking a really profound concept that challenges how we view our existence. We're talking about the philosophy of treating every single day as an entire lifetime.
Just to ground us, here's a look at the cover of our source material. In this explainer, we're going to impartially analyze the specific frameworks this text lays out for managing modern anxiety and finding purpose in our daily routines. The book as a whole delves into what it calls the aesthetics of gentleness and the origins of love. But for our purposes right now, we are zooming in exclusively on its incredibly practical, systematic approach to personal daily management and spiritual hygiene.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the season of harvest, then look at reaping your daily harvest. Third is one day, one life. Fourth is the division of suffering, and finally, embracing a new life. So, jumping right into Section 1, the season of harvest, thoughts in early autumn.
The source text uses the transition into early autumn as this really powerful metaphor. Think about it. Just as a farmer assesses their fields after a long, vibrant summer, the text suggests we have to step back and ask ourselves, what have we truly cultivated? A meaningful life doesn't just, spontaneously happen to us. It requires a deliberate assessment of our soul's development. It challenges us to actively measure this harvest rather than just drifting aimlessly through life.
Moving on to Section 2, Reaping Your Daily Harvest, the 3 Conditions.
The text actually breaks this harvest down into 3 very clear conditions. First up is the continuous, active pursuit of a right mind. It's an ongoing internal investigation. Second is learning divine truth without personal bias. That basically means absorbing knowledge with a totally open approach, rather than twisting things to fit whatever pre-existing opinions we might hold. And finally, condition 3 is practice. This means applying these truths and actively contributing to society through missionary work or by sharing them with others. The author argues that it's only by reaching this stage of usefulness that you can claim a true harvest.
Which brings us to Section 3, one day, one life, a paradigm shift.
Now, this is a massive paradigm shift. The text is asking us to take the vast, overwhelming span of an entire human life and compress our focus down to a single 24-hour cycle. To build this foundation, the source actually traces the philosophy back through history. It points to biblical teachings from Jesus Christ, as well as the work of Japanese Christian thinker Uchimura Kanzo. The universal message here? The troubles of today are enough for today. Seriously, don't borrow tomorrow's anxiety.
I mean, if you ask yourself, how can I make my entire lifetime a brilliant success? The sheer scale of that mountain is completely paralyzing, right? It's simply too big. But if you shrink the timeline and instead ask, how can I shine and do my absolute best for just today? Suddenly, the task is actually manageable. A lifetime, as the text notes, is simply the accumulation of these single, well-lived days.
To actually put this into practice, the author introduces a pretty radical evening routine. They say we should treat sleep as a form of death. Now, I know that sounds intense, but the goal is absolute peace. Every single night, you practice daily reflection, you settle your mental accounts, and you effectively die to your regrets. By doing this, you ensure that when you wake up the next morning, you are literally reborn, starting out with a completely clean slate.
Next up, Section 4, the division of suffering, cutting off needless anxiety.
80%. Yeah, the text states that a staggering 80% of human worries are entirely needless. They're usually either fabricated projections about a future that hasn't even happened yet, worrying about what might go wrong 1, 3, or 10 years down the line, or they are stubborn, unchangeable attachments to past mistakes. When it comes down to it, only a tiny fraction of our worry is actually rooted in the present moment.
So, the solution offered here is the division of suffering. By adopting this one-day, one-life mindset, you are artificially severing the ties to yesterday's baggage and tomorrow's fears. You're isolating your challenges strictly to the 24 hours you are currently living in, effectively stopping that snowballing accumulation of anxiety.
The author uses this fantastic visual metaphor to explain why this is absolutely critical. Imagine you live in a really snowy climate. If you go up to your roof and shovel just a little bit of snow every single day, it's an easy, totally manageable task. But if you ignore it and let that snow accumulate for weeks or months, the compounding weight of it will eventually crush the roof and destroy the entire house. Human anxiety works the exact same way. You have to clear away your problems and negative emotions daily before their accumulated weight destroys your peace of mind.
Finally, Section 5, Embracing a New Life, the True Enemy.
The text issues a pretty stark warning here. The most terrifying threats to a fulfilling life aren't always dramatic, external disasters. Far from it. They're actually the slow suffocations we all deal with. Daily boredom, creeping laziness, and the mundane repetition of routine without any fresh ingenuity. It's kind of like being slowly strangled by a silken cord. You don't even realize you're suffocating until it's too late.
But here is the super empowering flip side. If yesterday ended in death when you went to sleep, then this morning isn't just a continuation of some boring routine. It is an opportunity for a literal new life. The text is urging us to wake up every single day and aggressively combat that laziness. We have to live a fresh life with new ingenuity and new discoveries every day. Don't just let the day happen to you. Ask yourself, what am I going to invent today? What completely new approach will I take?
And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway of the one-day, one-life philosophy. If you truly clear your slate tonight, if you divide your suffering and absolutely refuse to carry today's snow into tomorrow, you get to be reborn. So, I'm going to leave you with this question drawn straight from the heart of the text. When you wake up and step into your new life tomorrow morning, what fresh ingenuity will you bring, and what will you discover? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this framework offers you a brand new way to look at your day.
Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really fascinating spiritual framework from Ryuho Okawa's work, The Origin of Love. We're going to be focusing specifically on Chapter 6, The Oneness of Buddha and Self. We'll be unpacking the actual mechanics of the soul, figuring out exactly where our daily thoughts are recorded, and tracing our ultimate journey toward universal oneness. So, if you've ever wondered how these massive, abstract spiritual ideas actually map onto our real, lived, everyday experiences, you are in the perfect place. So, let's just kick things off with a foundational question straight from the text. How do we actually feel the divine? How do abstract spiritual concepts turn into real, deeply felt human emotions? Well, the source material gives us a pretty profound answer. It suggests that the divine isn't some distant, untouchable thing you only find by isolating yourself on a mountaintop. Actually, it argues that the exact moment you learn a divine truth and feel this profound, surging emotion deep in your heart, that right there is the moment you are truly feeling the Buddha or God. It's an internal spark, not an external search. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're looking at feeling the divine truth, the true meaning of reflection, inside the thought belt, the soul's endless history, and finally, achieving divine oneness. All right, let's get into part 1, feeling the divine truth and that initial spark of understanding. The book uses this absolutely brilliant metaphor to explain this. It says the soul is basically like a diamond. Now, a diamond's brilliance comes entirely from its perfectly cut, perfectly balanced facets, right? If a diamond is cracked or the cut is lopsided, it just can't reflect light. It casts shadows instead. In the exact same way, the text explains that our soul has to develop balanced facets, representing different divine attributes like love, wisdom, and courage. To radiate beautifully, you have to hone and balance all of them. It's not just about being really good at one thing, it's about achieving this harmonious, full package reflection of the divine. So, how do we actually go about cutting these facets into our own soul's diamond? That brings us to section 2, the true meaning of reflection, and why it is so much more than just looking back. The text is super clear that we need to entirely reframe how we think about reflection. It is definitely not just sitting around feeling guilty or regretting your past mistakes. Instead, it's this highly proactive, positive act. It's the process of deliberately stripping away the shadows to get yourself back to the original state of a child of God. The author actually makes a really interesting contrast here between prayer and reflection. While prayer is described as an easy path where you're asking for divine connection, reflection is called the hard path. It requires rigorous self-effort. You have to take a really hard look at yourself. But the cool part is, when reflection is done right, with the genuine goal of nearing the divine, it actually aligns perfectly with true prayer. So where is all this inner work actually taking place? Let's check out section 3, Inside the Thought Belt, which is basically our spiritual anatomy. The text introduces a really fascinating concept called the thought belt, or the thought field. And you have to note the location here, because spiritually speaking, this recording area isn't up in your brain. It's actually located right in the center of your chest. It functions as this comprehensive spiritual storage drive that is constantly capturing every single one of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And the author illustrates how this works with a great technological analogy, comparing the thought belt to a CD or a tape recorder. Just like a CD stores data that plays back as music, your thought belt is continuously recording the unique melody of your daily life. Every little fluctuation in your mood, every single choice you make based on your circumstances, it is all being permanently etched right onto your personal spiritual CD. But, here is the critical warning from the text. Think about what happens if you scratch a CD. The music skips, it sounds completely distorted, right? In the exact same way, when we harbor negative thoughts or do things we know are wrong, our thought belt becomes clouded and smudged. And when this area near the chest gets clouded, the soul literally cannot receive or process divine light effectively. It creates a physical, or spiritual barrier. And this is exactly why that rigorous, hard path of reflection we just talked about is so absolutely crucial. Reflection is the process of polishing that CD. You are wiping away the smudges so the light can finally shine through again. So, what happens when you stack up these recordings over an eternity? That brings us to section 4, the soul's endless history and the weight of our past lives. The timescale we're talking about in this book is honestly mind-blowing. Your current life? That's just the newest CD being added to a massive, massive collection. The author notes that when you access these deep spiritual records, past lives from roughly the last 10,000 to 20,000 years still retain their distinct individual personalities. Like they can still speak with a unique voice. But as you go back even further, beyond 20,000 years, the memories transition into something totally different. They stop speaking as individual personas and instead start functioning as scenes in this massive, unified library of memory. It is just a breathtaking way to visualize the deep, deep evolutionary history that your soul is carrying around. Which leads us to ask, what is the ultimate point of accumulating tens of thousands of years of these records? Let's hit section 5, Achieving Divine Oneness, or Shinga Ichinyo. The text breaks this down through the concept of Shinga Ichinyo, which translates to the oneness of God and self, or specifically for this chapter, the oneness of Buddha and self. The author actually connects this modern spiritual teaching to ancient philosophies, comparing it directly to the concept of Brahma Atman from ancient India, which was taught way before the time of Buddha. Both frameworks fundamentally point to the exact same profound truth: the realization that the universal macrocosm, God or Brahma, and the individual microcosm, the self or Atman, are ultimately one and the same. We are all still striving for that exact same realization today. Because after all this reflection and thousands of years of recording experiences, the end goal definitely isn't isolation. As the text states, the ultimate destination is the state where God, or Buddha, and self become completely one. It's the realization that despite all our quirky, different individual personalities, we all share a path that leads right back to the exact same divine source. So bringing it all back down to earth right here, right now, we've zoomed from feelings inside our chest all the way out to a 20,000-year-old spiritual library and universal oneness. But your personal thought belt, it's spinning today. If your soul is recording its unique melody across millennia, what song are you writing right now? Are you creating a melody of harmony, getting ready to reflect divine light, or are you letting the CD get smudged? It's a huge, powerful thought to carry with you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.
Hey everyone! If you look around today, you honestly don't need to be an expert to sense that something fundamental is shifting. In this explainer, we're going to break down a really fascinating philosophical framework that attempts to make sense of this exact moment in history, exploring what it actually means to live on the cusp of a totally new era.
Do you feel like the world's values are currently turning upside down? I'm guessing a lot of you are nodding right now. Seriously, trying to keep up with what's considered common sense lately kind of feels like trying to read a map while on a roller coaster. What was widely accepted just 10 or 20 years ago is constantly being challenged, rewritten, or discarded entirely. And this instability isn't just a political or economic phase. According to the framework we're exploring today, it's actually the primary symptom of a much deeper spiritual diagnosis of our time.
To really get to the bottom of this, we're diving into a super compelling text called The Origin of Love by Ryuho Okawa. Specifically, we're zeroing in on Chapter 7, Overture to a New Era. This text provides a deeply spiritual lens through which we can view all those chaotic societal shifts we were just talking about. It argues that this chaos isn't random at all. Instead, it's a structured transition into a completely new age for humanity.
So, the text actually outlines what this transition feels like through 3 specific premonitions. First up is that dramatic reversal of common sense and old values. As the text suggests, what we're witnessing is a landslide-like overturning of what society used to value. But it definitely doesn't stop there. It also posits a growing, intuitive feeling of the close presence of the divine, plus a sense of the universe approaching, like a massive broadening of humanity's perspective beyond just our everyday earthly concerns. It's a huge expansion of awareness.
And there's this brilliant metaphor the text uses to illustrate just how abrupt and staggering this shift is. Quote, "It is as if a large whale that had been sinking deep at the bottom of the sea suddenly leaps to the surface of the ocean, blowing its spout." I mean, wow, I love that imagery. It perfectly captures the sheer scale and suddenness of the changing era. This isn't some slow, quiet evolution. It's hidden, potential, long dormant, violently and majestically breaking through the surface of our reality. It absolutely demands our attention.
Moving on to Section 1, the metaphorical journey, the autumn of humanity.
To figure out where we are in this grand cycle, the author brings in a really powerful metaphor: autumn. And you know, autumn is totally a season of duality, right? On one hand, you have the great harvest. We are currently reaping the absolute peak fruits of human civilization, unprecedented technological advancement, wealth, and accumulated knowledge. But autumn also signals the coming winter. Along with this immense harvest, we are witnessing the inevitable decline and decay of outdated systems, old powers fading away, and the approach of some pretty severe incoming trials.
Because of that incoming winter, the text actually issues a pretty clear warning. We can't just sit back and gorge on the harvest. We simply cannot be satisfied with the status quo. Instead, right now is the exact moment we need to be solidifying an unshakable foundation of divine truth. According to the text, we have to accumulate the inner strength and the structural resilience necessary to withstand the trials, the confusion, and the metaphorical freezing temperatures of the changes ahead.
Which naturally brings us to a really vital question. If all those old values, the systems that literally guided us for centuries, are falling away like dead autumn leaves, well, what takes their place? How do we build that solid foundation? We know the problem, but what exactly is the prescription?
That takes us to Section 2, the prescription, seeking a new enlightenment.
So, the prescription for our age, according to the text, is the pursuit of a new enlightenment. But wait, this isn't about dusting off some abstract knowledge from 2,000 years ago and just feeling good about it. Ancient wisdom is great, but the text argues that for today's unique trials, we need practical truth. We need an enlightenment that is actively applied to daily life and, most importantly, backed by immediate action. It's enlightenment as a verb, not just a noun. So how do you actually do that? Well, the text lays out a really practical methodology. Step 1, digest spiritual knowledge. Learn those foundational truths. Step 2, bring it down to the practical level. You have to stop treating it as lofty, abstract theory. And step 3, apply it to everyday life. It's all about taking these vast philosophical concepts and turning happiness into a tangible, repeatable science that you execute in your daily routine, your job, and your relationships.
Next up is Section 3, the vision. The bell of hope rings.
Now, if all this talk of winter and trials sounds a bit daunting, don't worry. The text makes a hard pivot here from survival prep to an ultimate vision of incredible optimism. The author writes, "I can hear the bell of hope ringing. I can see the bell of hope ringing." Despite the harsh realities of these shifting eras, the fundamental view of this text is one of profound empowerment. The arrival of this new era isn't a tragedy at all. It's literally the ringing of a bell of hope for those who are prepared to listen and act. In fact, the text goes so far as to claim that this new era is a time when miracles become an everyday occurrence. I mean, just think about that for a second. When you strip away all that rigid, outdated thinking and align yourself with a practical, living truth, the extraordinary becomes normal. This is an era that demands a renewed sense of purpose and a deep, deep sense of awe at what is possible when humanity truly wakes up.
And finally, Section 4, A Future Far Away, Building a Legacy.
You see, this wake-up call isn't just about making our own lives better right now. It's about looking to a future far, far away. To get there, the text calls for what it describes as a sacred war against the status quo, challenging us to not fall into a rut, to escape a life of apathy, to break down fixed, rigid concepts, and to walk powerfully as warriors of a new light. This isn't just about patching up today's immediate problems. It's about actively battling the intellectual laziness that prevents society from evolving.
And why exactly are we waging this war against apathy? Well, the ultimate goal presented in the text is leaving an enduring legacy for humanity that stretches far into the distant future. The autumn of humanity basically requires us to harvest the absolute best of what we've achieved, discard the decaying systems, and plant the seeds of truth so deep that generations, centuries from now will reap the benefits of the foundation we build today.
So, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought today. Based on everything we've unpacked in this explainer, how will you apply your own new enlightenment to build a legacy for the distant future? Are you going to cling to the falling autumn leaves, or are you preparing the ground for the generations to come? It's a massive shift for sure, but as we've seen, it's also a time of incredible hope. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I highly encourage you to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep building that foundation.
Welcome to today's explainer on Ryuho Okawa's deeply moving work, The Origin of Love. We're jumping right into a fascinating chapter all about love, light, and kindness. We're going to unpack these profound reflections on how we connect with each other, moving from the tiniest internal spark to the grandest visions of human existence. It's an incredible journey through some truly stunning metaphors that, honestly, will probably change how you look at your everyday interactions. So, to kick things off, I want you to hold this one specific question in your mind as we trace the evolution of love today. What does it actually look like to care for others without limits, without conditions, and most importantly, without burning out? It's a massive question, right? But the author breaks it down into some remarkably accessible, poetic ideas. The whole exploration begins with this incredibly intimate metaphor. Okawa positions himself not as some grand, unapproachable philosopher on a hill, but simply as a humble creator, a craftsman, making matches. He says he wants to create matches of dreams, to ignite something special in our hearts. It's just such a grounding way to start, you know? Just someone trying to spark a little bit of hope in the dark. And this beautifully illustrates how the journey starts on a micro level. The core desire here is to deliver specific, comforting elements to each individual's heart during the absolute coldest, most difficult seasons of life. Think of a harsh, bitter winter. A single match can provide a momentary bright light or a touch of emotional heat. It reminds us of the literal warmth of human blood and the cozy safety of a family home. It's all about delivering comfort when things feel totally bleak. Now, let's contrast that single spark with two very different, much broader types of love. What Okawa calls Santa Claus love versus wind love. It sounds a bit playful, but the underlying philosophy is actually super profound. See, there's a tragic limitation to conditional giving. Think about Santa Claus. He only has so many presents in his bag, right? He can only visit so many homes. Against that kind of limited physical love, the author places the infinite, completely invisible reach of the wind. Because there is an inherent sadness in wanting to give infinite love, but realizing that physical gifts, or transactional love, always eventually run out. Recognizing this, Okawa expresses a deep desire to transcend those Santa Claus limitations. He writes about wishing to become like an invisible, gentle wind that blows from nowhere, comforts absolutely everyone it passes, and just continues on without ever being depleted. The crucial point here is the complete selflessness of this wish. True love, in this context, is defined by providing relief without demanding any recognition or leaving a heavy footprint behind. He explicitly states he wants to be a wind named Ryuho Okawa and a wind named Happy Science that blows and passes through transparently. It's this beautiful vision of love. It's like a breeze that cools you on a scorching hot day. You feel its profound comfort. You're grateful for it, but you can't capture it, and you don't owe it anything in return. But love isn't just wind, right? It's also a dance of light, but not a harsh, blinding illumination. You know that glaring spotlight that exposes every flaw and makes you just want to hide? Yeah, that is not love. Instead, we should favor a soothing, balmy glow. Okawa specifically compares it to the light of a warm, spring-like autumn day. It's the kind of light that just naturally invites you to step outside, close your eyes, and breathe. Building on that feeling, think about how ideal love naturally creates spaces of peace and quiet joy. Just picture this gentle light glistening on a shallow spring brook. Imagine it casting warmth over sleeping animals, bathing resting babies, and illuminating people who are just taking a moment to relax on park benches. This is love as a gentle, ambient presence. It simply makes the environment safer and warmer for absolutely everyone in it. Crucially, though, this isn't just about passively receiving that light. We have to internalize this warmth so we can deeply share in the joys and sorrows of the people around us. By absorbing that gentle, spring-like light, we basically become equipped to sit on those benches of life next to someone who is hurting, bringing a quiet, non-judgmental comfort to their day. Moving right along to Section 4, Always Be a Kind Person, the Actionable Philosophy of Love. So moving from poetic imagery into practical application, how do we actually walk through the world every single day? Well, it starts by realizing that kindness isn't just passive sweetness or being a total pushover. True kindness often requires courageous words, and it demands strong, decisive actions. It might mean standing up for someone or speaking a really difficult truth, but, and this is absolutely key, it must always be grounded deeply in a genuine gentleness, with the ultimate aim of making the maximum number of people happy. It's a very active, powerful form of empathy. I absolutely love this insight from the text. Being a little too kind is just right for life. It directly challenges that modern idea of heavily guarding ourselves, or the fear that if we're too nice, people are just going to take advantage of us. It suggests instead that over-indexing on kindness is exactly what prevents the world from feeling dry, rigid, and cold. If you're going to err on the side of being a little too gentle. So all of this, the dreams, the wind, the light, the kindness, it all leads us to the ultimate goal of human existence. What actually is true human happiness? Is it worldly success? Is it total isolation and undisturbed peace? To answer that, Okawa compares the solitary existence of Robinson Crusoe on a deserted island with the reality of living among a society of contemporaries. A solitary existence, no matter how peaceful or completely unbothered it might be, can never generate true happiness. And why is that? Because happiness fundamentally requires relationships. You simply cannot generate joy in total isolation. This leads to such an incredibly profound realization. Happiness is actually born in the space between people. It cannot exist in a vacuum. It's the friction, the connection, the shared glances, and the mutual support that actually spark the feeling we call happiness. Without the other, happiness simply doesn't exist. To really drive this home, when Okawa wrote this text back in the late 1980s, he marveled at the absolute miracle of having 5 billion contemporaries sharing the earth at the exact same time. Just think about the astronomical odds of you being alive right now, sharing this exact era with billions of other human beings. It's a massive, shared cohort of souls offering literally endless opportunities for connection. By the end of this philosophical journey, the definitions of love and happiness beautifully merge into the exact same shared human experience. Happiness isn't some achievement you unlock all by yourself. It's the act of living among others, conversing, sharing joy and sorrow, and quite literally holding hands. If love is the connection between people and happiness is born entirely in the space between people, then love and happiness are essentially identical. Ultimately, this leaves us with a deeply moving call to action. We're asked to look at this vast, interconnected world of billions of contemporaries and make love our personal vow. We have to actively commit to spreading this love and increasing the number of happy human beings on the planet. using whatever unique tools we have at our disposal. Which beautifully summarizes our journey today, reminding us of the immense power of invisible, gentle, and shared connection. Love doesn't have to be a heavy, demanding force. It can be a passing breeze that cools a stranger. It can be a warm light that illuminates a quiet park. And it is always found in the courageous, actionable kindness we show to one another. I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to carry with you out into the real world today. How can you actively step out and be that little bit of extra kindness the world so desperately needs? How can you blow through someone's life like a refreshing wind, leaving them better off without asking for absolutely anything in return? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.